Hey guys, Chris here. I'm going to share with you my experience in working with agent teams this week. It's where I took 4 Claude agents working simultaneously on a project and then created a nifty emotional tracker, if you will, during meetings to help me make sure I stay positive and professional. And I used it with this paradigm called agent teams using Claude and also Git worktrees. So last week I was listening to the AI Daily Brief, an excellent podcast if you haven't heard of it, and learned about Conductor, which is a Mac app for orchestrating teams of coding agents. OpenClaw also does the same thing. And I wanted to be able to do something quite similar. Now, Conductor runs only on a Mac, and I'm a PC guy. I haven't had a Mac in a long time. And OpenClaw is sort of, a web service. I haven't actually tried it out myself. But you can do the same thing. Now, the principle is based on a paper, or I guess something that the Anthropic team put out, where you can orchestrate teams of Claude Code sessions. You basically have multiple agents working together, and that's what I did here. And they talk about using Git worktrees and stuff and sub agents, and that's what I did. So I went to Claude and I asked it a simple question. I would show you the prompt, but today Claude actually lost my prompt history. It's the strangest thing. So instead, after listening to the podcast, I said, this is my chat history from Claude on the 29th. I said, hey, have you heard of Conductor IDE, the one where you can run many instances of Claude Code in parallel? And it said, no, but I said, great, do some research and find out. And so it did some research and learned about this whole concept. And it did recommend that I go and look at Crystal, which has a nice GUI, and you can run multiple terminals at once. So if you want to do that, you can. Unfortunately, I have to build it for Windows, and Claude convinced me that I could just do it with all just with Windows terminals. And so I'm going to show you the Windows terminals approach today. It's going to be real simple, and then you can actually get my code if you want it and look at it yourself at the GitHub link here for me, Chris A. Harden at EQ Media Coach. So I'll show you all that in a bit. But first, let me show you a video of how the actual application works. So what you have here in front of you is a Zoom meeting, and I'm in the camera so you can see me. And I also have right in front of me the actual Android phone here with the application running. And inside there, the top section is actually showing how it's looking at my face and interpreting my emotions, with a little video there to show what it's seeing, because I was doing some debug work. And then there's also a speech listener with the audio RMS right here to see if I'm getting too angry. And they're voting to see whether or not they should show a green screen, or if I get a little annoyed, maybe it'll go red or go orange. It just depends on what it's interpreting as to whether it gives me a warning like it did there. Okay, so again, this video is more about the how I got the agents to build everything, but at least you see what the application looks like. Okay, so now that you've seen how the application works, let's get into what I did. So I asked Claude first to give me, let me show you the diagram. So this is the diagram. I said, hey, Claude, give me a PRD. So in the podcast, the way he lays it out, it says, this is what these guys have been doing. They first come up with a really good product requirements document, and then break it into stories. And that's what we give to each one of these 4 agents that you see here in green. And so I'll show you what that looks like. Now I gave a prompt to Claude that said, this is what I'm trying to build, which is the application you guys saw. And so it actually wrote this product requirement document right here, which is really nice. And he went so far as actually to talk about the colors down here in the bottom so that the agents would know what to do. And then the next step was, again, to convert it into epics, stories, points, and all that. And of course, the epics, the way Claude decided to do it was make 1 agent per epic. And so there were 4. There was one for the Android application, for the shell of it, the actual capture work with the camera, and also talking to the server. Here's the server here, which is a Docker container, And then there's actually inside the Docker containers accessing 2 machine learning models, one for the face and one for the voice. And so with that in mind, it wrote this nice PRD, and it also then broke down into another document these stories and how the team should work together. So here's a backlog with all the epics. Here's all the stories, and they are broken into waves 1, 2, and 3. And so whereas some of these other applications like Conductor, there's an orchestrator itself, I wanted to be a part of the process. It's also a little advanced to have an agent sitting on top in this little diagram here. So I was essentially the agent in the middle. It kind of made me feel like George Jetson, where I was just sort of telling each one to move forward and answering questions as they wanted to move forward. And that's because Claude is a little conservative around going and doing things in your hard drive. So that was the scenario. The other document that it made was this coordination guide, which is not nicely formatted, but it really was just for the agents to know what they're supposed to do, how far they're supposed to go, and then when they were supposed to stop and let me do a little coordination and then move ahead. And so now I'm going to show you how I set everything up. So this is my little development directory, EQ Meeting Coach. And basically, I just cracked open a terminal, just a good old PowerShell terminal. Now you can use hotkeys. If you hit, I think it's Control Alt or Shift Alt plus, you can split the screen into two, which I didn't know about until this exercise, and then Control Shift Alt and minus, and then you can split it into top and bottoms. And then here, if I've still got them, oh, I do, look at that. So there's all my previous commands. So I'm going to change into the meeting coach over here, go change directories into my Android app over here, change directories into my server over here, and this one was for the models right there. And so now I've got 4 windows, and then I just launched Claude in each one of those guys like this. Sorry, let's try that again. Claude, there we go. And you can see that experience is coming up as usual. And Claude, there we go. And I'm also getting a little notification here that I'm at my max because I really have maxed out the monthlies in the monthly service that they have. So that's how you get everything set up. And then you start feeding the commands to it one by one and telling each what areas you're supposed to work on. And you say, go and look at the documents in this folder, and you figure out which agent you are and what you're supposed to be doing. And then they start working in parallel. And I'll give you a few screenshots just so you can see what that looks like of what the different stages were as we went through the process here. So just kind of work through here and kind of show you a few of these. Here they're just getting started, and they're asking for a bunch of permission, which is what you see here in light blue. Can I move forward? Yes, you can. It was doing a bunch of different pieces of work, and you can see how it's going through and marking out the stories as it's gotten a little further and what it thinks it's supposed to be doing. And each one of these is doing their own thing. You'll see some diffs going on, like up here in the top right, and they're waiting on the next part. And then when they all get done, they say, okay, I'm done. I'm going to wait for the next thing. And they all look at the contract and they know when they're supposed to stop. And these are the branches, which I still do have in my GitHub repo, but each one of them worked on a branch. I forgot to mention that part. So GitHub worktrees is essentially making a duplicate of each of the main, if you know anything about Git, your master branch or your main branch, you'll make branches for all the agents to work in, and then they're all on your hard drive at once. Usually when you're working in Git, you switch branches and you're in the same code tree. They actually have, in this case with worktrees, all the work trees are sitting right here. So every single of those agents, they had their own personal folder they're working in, and then when they were ready, they'd commit the code up to their own branches up here. And so that's the work tree paradigm, in addition to using the terminals to talk to each one of the agents while they worked in parallel. And so they kept going through things. I just took different screenshots along the way. And then at some point, here's actually after the merge. Once everything got done, I went with just a single Claude instance. And I said, okay, look, we need to merge all these in now. Can you please help me with that? And Claude will do that. Claude will look at everything. He'll do all the merges, label it, and push it for you too. And so that was what that was. Here is when I was pulling down model weights. That's the next thing. And there had to be changes and just, making changes and everything. So this is the final GitHub repo here. Let me see if there's anything else I want to show you. Yes. So if you're interested in the resources you need to do this kind of work, this is the memory. So normally I'm sitting at around, 40 gigs, 50 gigs. I had a bunch of Google windows open at the time that I took this shot. So probably around 3 or 4 gigs of RAM were used to do this work. And there's that. Okay, so when it was all said and done, we went through 3 different waves of work. And with each wave, I would commit and get everything all cleaned up, and then I'd go to the next one. And so here's all my Git scripts to just go and commit all the waves with the appropriate labels and comments and stuff like that. I'll maybe show it to you real quick here. Just to commit this, commit that with the different comments. And so that's how they stayed in sync. When wave one was done, they'd wait for me. I make sure everything was all cleaned up. I do a quick look over everything to be sure things were synchronized with Claude. And then I'll then tell each of the agents, okay, move forward to wave 2. And they'll go look at the coordination guide. They'll go look at their stories and then move on with the next part of their project. And so that's essentially how they all got coordinated. I think the last thing I'm going to show you is the actual system diagram so you can see what that looks like. So here's the system that it built, with 4 agents. So the Android app is the one capturing the video and the audio. And you can see it has a UI layer, a view model layer. It's got business logic in here. It's talking to the client and it pushes through standard protocol to the backend server. And then it has some utilities because it's dealing with images and waves, audio files and that kind of stuff. And then on the right, there is a Docker. Let me see if I can actually bring up Docker quickly enough for this video. It's a Docker server that's running. Sorry. And inside of there, it's of course taking all the information. It opens up a web API, a web socket, and then it hears all the interfaces, has all the information coming through. And then you can see the model layer. It's using a face analyzer and a speech analyzer for the models. Deep Face is the name of the face analyzer, and Sense Voice is the speech. They're both open sourced. They have all their weights available, and so you can download the models, download the weights, and then there's a config file which I can use to say which one I think has more impact on the vote as to whether or not the screen should be green, orange, or red. So the idea is then you can tweak it a little bit here and there to make it meet the way you talk and the way you operate. And so it's all inside this Docker container, as I mentioned sooner. Now it does have CUDA support, but for some reason I haven't looked at it yet. It doesn't know it can use my GPU. I've got a 4090 in here, but that's okay. It still works pretty well without a GPU. And let me show you that real quick, and I'll come back to the timing diagram in just a moment. So the screenshots here. Here was the burden from running the application. So that activity right there is essentially the app. Again, I had Google sort of sitting in the background with a bunch of tabs open. I don't imagine too much of that was usually Chrome. I think it was mainly processing the video signal and the audio signal into the 2 models and then sending back the vote on what color to make the screen. Okay, so the Wi-Fi was probably the most interesting part. I hadn't really thought too much about it, but basically the Android app opens up and sends get and post commands to the API, the endpoint that's available in the web server. And there was a very consistent spike. It actually got up to 3.5 megs per second at the beginning, but it kind of settled in here. So I need to see whether or not this is disruptive when I'm on Zoom calls. There was one time where I had a bit of a pause in the Zoom call. I wasn't sure if it was this or just maybe network traffic that they were experiencing. So as it is, if I find that I keep getting too much video traffic through here, I might just do audio only and see whether or not that's good enough to help me, stay aware of myself in meetings. And so the biggest spike again was Wi-Fi, but that was interesting because it's all local network. It's not going anywhere. I have the Android app running on the phone right here in front of me, as you saw, and then the Docker container is running right here on a really powerful gaming laptop that I have. And so it's all local network traffic. For what that's worth, in case you're curious, you could run this all on your local system. And then here's the GPU activity, a little bit of video decoding. So I'm not really quite sure, excuse me, whether or not that was part of my activity or not. I haven't had a chance to look too much under the hood on how it all works. The purpose of this video is to talk with you about how you can make multiple agents work at once. And then memory, of course, while I was running, it did take, because of the models, it probably took around 2 to 3 or 4 gig of RAM to run the application. And this here is the timing diagram, just to give you an idea of how it all flows back and forth. So we got up at the top here, the Android app, every 4 seconds. I really haven't tried to see if it can go more frequently. I think it could. It sends gets the photograph and the audio sample, and then it sends those over the network, over to the server. And it's just a local network. And then, that basically goes into the face analyzer. It has some specific performance metrics it's expecting. and then deep face does its assessment of whether I'm angry, I'm sad, or whatever. And then the speech analyzer, sense voice, does the same thing with tone, pitch, etc., and it comes up with a score. And this little math right here is the vote. It's basically a 60-40 vote that you can change that in the config YAML file if you care to in the tree, the source code. And then it sends back whatever the verdict is, and then the display gets updated to red, green, or yellow. So I believe that's everything I wanted to show you. Next steps, if you want to, you can go to my website here, my GitHub rather, pull it all down, have a look. All the information is in there, including the docs that I showed you early, in case you just want to see how all that was set up. The docs are both in Markdown format as well as in docx format, which it didn't work as well for me, I'll be honest with you. You might want to look at the MDs. It's up to you. But that's it. Everyone, thank you so much for your time, and we'll talk soon.